I just got Mr. James down for a nap. He was throwing a fit. He did not particularly want to take a nap today, but that is how it goes for children sometimes, I suppose. Today we're going to be discussing final table strategy, focusing on ICM and shorthanded play, two very, very, very important things to consider. I see a lot of you already here. I want to welcome all of you. If you like my streams, click like, click subscribe. I would appreciate that. If you're playing 20 tables at a time, isn't that just a Zoom session? No, because the games are softer. If you play 20 games that are not Zoom/fast forward tables, those are going to be way softer than the Zoom/fast forward tables because those games are typically much tougher. When you run deep, you get it all in and you lose. WTF? Well, realize sometimes you're going to lose when you get it all in. That happens. That's why I have to play a lot of volume. I've actually been watching Michael Acevedo, the GTO master, stream recently, and he's made a final table of a major event basically every day, but he takes something like 9th place every day. He's playing great, gets some chips, gets it all in, loses, and that's the day. And you have to make sure that you are playing very properly bankrolled. Most people don't play properly bankrolled. And also, you have to make sure that you have a good, strong mental mindset. Like right here, say you lost 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5 is irrelevant. I hate to break it to you, but 4 out of 5 means essentially nothing. Thanks to all of you for being here early. If you have not already, check out the new app we have. It's called the Poker Coaching app in the Android store or the iTunes store. Search Poker Coaching. It'll come right up. We have a push-fold chart. We have a push-fold app you can use in-game very easily. We have a push-fold quiz. We also have quizzes available to you. If you are a Poker Coaching member, that's my training site if you're new here, you can access the quizzes. Also, we have a lot of new updates coming out in the very near future too. We're going to be having the classes in the app, as well as a new PREFLOP app that gives you all of the most up-to-date PREFLOP game theory optimal ranges solved by Monker Solver. That's going to be available for the Poker Coaching members. So, get the app. It's completely free to go and get the app. You'll have to sign in to use some of the features, but check it out. You might as well make use of the materials we have available for you. You seem to make it deep in tournaments, but then when you get down to 4 people, you're lost. Well, understand that 4-handed is not all that different than 9-handed. Ask yourself, anytime you're playing in a different scenario, what has actually changed? And when you're playing short-handed, the only thing that's actually changed is there are now fewer people at the table. So essentially, you are in the cutoff, as opposed to, under the gun when you're under the gun. Under the gun 9-handed is not under the gun 4-handed. Just presume the first 5 people folded from a regular table, and that's it. You just play good, fundamentally sound cutoff strategies. I know it sounds overly simplistic, but it's actually true. Now, there are card removal effects that impact your strategy a little bit, but it really should not change your strategy a ton if you're sitting there still playing somewhat deep stacked. All right. Let's see. Why would you play regular games instead of Zoom games? Because the games are usually softer. You want to play games where you can make money. And it turns out most people are not winning very much at all in the fast forward/Zoom games. All right. It's 2 p.m. Eastern time. Let's get started. Today we're going to be discussing final table strategy, ICM and short-handed play. So in an online multi-table tournament, that's what MTT means, these are very, very profitable games, but you have to make sure that you are studying hard and putting in the volume. Like one of you said earlier, you lost 4 out of 5, all ends is the favorite. What's going on? Well, 4 out of 5 is nothing. You need to be looking at, hundreds of samples. Last week, we actually focused on how to run deep in multi-table tournaments, so make sure you check out that video if you have not seen it already. And today, we're going to be discussing how to play the final table and how to really learn to play ICM situations and short stack situations well. And then we'll finish up this video in the upcoming weeks with a webinar purely focused on heads-up strategy. And like I said, we have the Poker Coaching app, and we will be having the Game Theory Optimal heads-up charts there as well. Those will be uploaded sometime soon as the developers cooperate and Apple cooperates. So, introduction to ICM, the independent chip model. At the beginning of a tournament, Well, let's just take a hypothetical scenario. Let's say we're playing a 10-handed sit and go. Okay, this is where 10 people sit down, they all buy in for $10, and then everyone has, let's say, 10,000 chips. Okay? In this game, first place is $50, second place is $30, and third place is $20. Just a standard sit and go. Well, in tournaments, the chips that you risk are worth more than the chips you can win. And the more chips you have, the less each individual chip is worth. And so what I mean by this is, let's say we do win the tournament. Well, how many chips do we have now? We have 100,000 chips when we win the tournament, but we're only getting half of the money. What if we're playing three-handed and we have 90,000 chips, we have 90% of the money, yet the other two players have 5,000 chips each for half a starting stack? What is their half of a starting stack worth? Well, you know they're guaranteed at least second place, so their 0.5 starting stacks, which at the tournament was worth $10, are now worth at least $20. At least, right? Because they're guaranteed to take second. Or they're guaranteed to take third, and one of them's going to take second. They're not going to win all that often, so their average value may be like $26 or $27, something like that. But still, $27 for half of a starting stack is quite valuable. And this is very, very important for you to understand and fully comprehend when you're playing sit and goes, but it's also important in tournaments because tournaments have a somewhat similar payout. So ICM is a mathematical model designed to assign a monetary value to chip stacks that is representative of their equity share of the remaining prize pool. Just because you have half the chips in play does not mean you own half the money in play, because as you see here, if you had, let's say, half the chips in play three-handed, obviously you're not going to win every time, so certainly you don't own half of the money. Let's give you an example of this. This is a tournament that poker coaching member Jay Saliba played recently. This was a $100 tournament where first place was $52,000 and eighth place was $4,756. This is a normal structured final table, nothing fancy. First place was 16% of the prize pool, so just normal structure. So with 8 players left, what do you think the biggest stack is worth in terms of dollars? And also, what do you think the shortest stack is worth? As we see here, there is one big stack with 48,000 chips. And then the shortest stack is one of these players with, let's say 48 million. And one of these players also has, or 3 of these players have 12 million chips. So take a second, think about it. What do you think this big stack is worth? And also, what do you think these shallow stacks are worth? Notice these shallow stacks are 15 big blinds each. Take a second, think about it. Feel free to type it in the chat if you feel like it. Well, in this scenario, you can use an ICM calculator to figure this out. What you do is you go through and you enter in all of the payouts. Here they are here, like I said, standard structure. And then you enter in all of the chip stacks. And once you do this, this will give you the value of every stack. And you can just search ICM calculator in Google. This will come right up. This was on ICMizer. It's completely free to use this tool. So let's take a look at this, right? So notice here we have these 3 12 million chip stacks. They're each worth about $17,000, okay? Let's say they get it all in against each other. Flipping, they're 50-50. You would, well, logical reasoning would tell you that if they got it in flipping, they'd have, sometimes they double up and sometimes they lose. But in reality, take a look at their equity if they do double up. So they'd have 24 million chips, but then combined, they would not have $34,000. They would have something like $24,000. They'd be between these two stacks right here. And that shows you right there that these short stacks really do not want to get it all in unless they have a very huge advantage, right? So that is something that is very important to realize. I think a lot of people think that if you can get it all in with a reasonably good hand like pocket nines or ace queen, that you should be very happy to do that in this scenario. But that is actually not all that true. Because the risk of busting in 8th place is absolutely terrible. It is detrimental. So really, none of these stacks want to risk going broke without a very substantial edge. And I think that's something that you will not witness in a lot of small or medium stakes final tables. A lot of people, they'll just be ramming and jamming it all in, thinking their goal is to win the tournament. And while, it's nice to win the tournament, at the end of the day, if you are playing poker for a living, your goal is to make money, which is not win the tournament, which is why you actually see a lot of the best players in the world have a whole lot of second and third places. It's not ideal, but notice here, if you can just play kind of tight and turn this $17,000 that you have in equity into, on average, let's say $28,000 just by playing kind of tight and getting it in good on average, clearly that's going to be way better than getting in there and blasting very hard. Okay, so let's take a look at this situation. Here we are at this same final table again. This is a hand that one of our poker coaching members played. We have a raise from the big stack, and then we have pocket eights on the button. What should we do in this spot? Notice here some of the stacks have changed. We have one 12 million chip stack now. We have an 11 million chip stack with 12 million or so, but the blinds are a little bit higher. Take a second. Let me know what we should do in this spot. While you all are watching this, thinking about this, click like, click subscribe. I would appreciate it. All right. So far we see a few calls. Okay. All right. Well, let's discuss this situation. First things first, what is the big stack raising with in general? Well, if he was raising with a default-ish 25% opening range, which is what a lot of low jack players would do, you would have a very easy all-in if there are no payout implications. In this scenario, we would be jamming it all in for about 9 times his initial raise, which is great. That is a very, very good shove stack. It's exactly what you want to be doing if this was not at a final table. But you should recognize that because there are payout implications, this is not the scenario we are looking at. We are looking at a spot where you really don't want to be getting it all in. Okay? So using this strategy of just going all in or folding with this range is not ideal, but this is what a lot of people do. Also realize your only options are not all in or fold. You're allowed to call as well. Okay, now taking the payout implications into account, assuming we're going to use an all in or fold strategy, this is what we can do. And you see, even pocket tens and ace queen offsuit and the ace queen suited are barely profitable to go all in this scenario because of the payout jumps, which means we cannot go all in here. And if anything, it's probably just a fold. I mean, I am usually figuring out a way to play this hand probably by calling, but even then, that could be a bit of a leak. However, this is not the end of the thought process because the low jack is probably not opening the default 25% of hands because due to being the chip leader, the big stack should actually be opening wider because they can apply this pressure to you and the rest of the opponents. So bad people in the low jack seat or tight players are probably just going to get out a default range chart and use that and say, all right, raise 25% of hands, and they do it. But if your opponent is using the optimal raising strategy, raising with about 36% of hands due to having a big stack, well, now we need to adjust. So now you see, if the opponent is a good player and they realize that they are supposed to be adjusting in this situation and not raising the default 25% of hands, now we should actually go all in. So you see, the payouts are relevant, but also so is your opponent's strategy and adjustment to the strategy. So understand that if your opponent is using the optimal pre-flop raising strategy, or if they're even looser than that, you see, pocket eights is fine to shove. Now, 0.07% of the prize pool is not a ton, but it's some. Notice over here, though, if your opponent's just raising 25% of hands, then it's way too tight. Does the 15-to-1 ratio of set mining apply here? I don't know where you're getting this 15-to-1 number. I'm usually happy to call with something like 10-to-1 with the pairs. And yeah, it does. You'd have to be a little bit tighter because sometimes you're going to get jammed on by these two players, which is certainly not what you want to have happen. But, yeah, I think it is reasonable to call. And I'm probably calling in this spot, but shoving could certainly be fine. Now, if you see this player, the big stack, opening very, very wide, then you have a very, very different adjustment. You want to be just jamming very, very wide. So look, this is what you should probably do against people who seem to be good regulars who understand they should be opening a little bit wider. Compare this, though, to if there were no payout implications. You see with no payout implications, even if your opponent's opening only 25% of hands, we just have a trivially easy all-in. Like 2.28 is huge, and we are more than happy to rip it in. But with the opponent opening wider with payout implications, this pocket eights becomes a marginally profitable all-in. And in the very marginally profitable spots, I definitely think it is reasonable to develop a calling range. And I think it's probably fine to call in the scenario with a hand like pocket aces, pocket kings, then something like pocket eights, pocket sevens, pocket sixes, hands like 10-9 suited, queen 10 suited, queen jack suited, king 10 suited, king jack suited, ace 10 suited, and ace jack offsuit, king queen offsuit, hands like that. And you may say, well, isn't that easy to play against because it's a bunch of pairs and marginal hands? Well, realize we have aces and kings when we call in that scenario too, and that's going to make us way more difficult to play against. Okay? All right, here we are again. Take a look at this scenario. We are in this same final table. We have 16 big blinds with ace king in the cutoff seat. Okay? Take a look. There's a 12 big blind stack, and then everybody else has more than us. So what would you do in this scenario? Take a second, think about it. Also, make sure you stick around till the end of this video because I have a special announcement for you all. We have something fun coming to poker coaching members that they've enjoyed recently. And we're going to do it again, so hang out for that. All right. So in this scenario, we have a very easy all-in. In this scenario, if we were just trying to win chips, if we did not care about the payouts whatsoever, we would definitely just make a standard min raise. But with the payout implications, we need to just go all in. We do not want to raise and then have someone else use any other option. We want their only option to be to call if they have something really good. And that's going to result in them folding the vast majority of the time, which is very, very good for us. And kind of like that pocket ace hand, how it was barely profitable. If we raise to the minimum with this hand and they get jammed on, it's actually just like barely profitable for us to call. And that is not ideal. In this scenario, we do still want to have a min-raising range. We do want to be min-raising stuff like pocket queens and better, maybe pocket jacks, and then some random bluffs like king jack offsuit, king 10 offsuit, etc. that don't want to jam. They're not quite good enough to jam. But typically we're raising with the absolute best hands for value plus a few blocker bluffs with just strong big cards. So that's what we're going to be doing in this scenario. I think a lot of people make the mistake here of just min-raising everything, and they perhaps don't even have an open jamming strategy. And that's definitely a big mistake. Big Stacks will defend their big blind wider, says, me can't play. Which is actually not good for you. You do not want them to be defending their big blind wide. You want to just rip it in, and then if they want to call it for all their money, I mean, it is what it is. But that is the only way to play ace-king in this scenario, and I think a lot of people mess that up. So let's discuss the idea of risk premium. Risk premium is the extra equity that you need for a decision to be profitable when taking into account ICM. So normally, you need some amount of chip EV to make a call if there are no payout implications whatsoever. But then you need some additional amount of equity to justify calling or bluffing or making any play when there are payout implications. That usually leads everyone besides the bigger stacks to be much tighter when it comes to putting chips in the pot. And sometimes even the bigger stacks should be tighter whenever they are facing an all-in. So the hard thing to do at a final table, and especially before the final table, like say on the bubble or once you get in the money, is actually determine what this risk premium is. In a lot of scenarios, it's just straight up impossible for the tools that we currently have. For example, let's say you're on the bubble of a tournament, and let's say there is one player with one big blind, and you have 10 big blinds. Okay? Everybody else, let's say there's another 80 people, they all have between 10 and 30 big blinds, okay? Everyone folds to the small blind, they go all in for 30 big blinds, you have pocket aces in the big blind. Should you call? Knowing that if you just fold for like 4 or 5 hands, you're almost guaranteed to get in the money because there's a one big blind stack hanging around somewhere. Well, let's say you are supposed to call with aces but fold with kings. Fine. Let's say now there are 2 players with one big blind in the tournament. Now does it become a fold with aces? What if there's 17 one big blind stacks hanging around in the tournament to the point that you're just a lock of the century to get in the money? Like, where is the cutoff to where you should actually just make a fold there? And the thing is, it's very, very difficult to figure that kind of thing out. But here is a very simplified chart that will kind of let you know the additional amount of equity you're going to need in various spots to make a call, assuming that there are not any very, very obviously short stacks like a one big blind stack. So imagine all the stacks are between like 10 big blinds and 40 big blinds, which is often where you'll be at in the final table. But the way you read this chart is you take the stack on the left, let's say we are a big stack, and then you compare it to these other stacks. This assumes you have to call an all-in against these other stacks. So let's say, for example, you have 30 big blinds, all right? Everyone folds to the small blind. They go all in for 30 big blinds as well. Everybody else in the tournament has like 12 big blinds. In that scenario, you're going to need something like an additional 20 to 25% equity to make that call. So if you normally needed to have, let's call it 48% to make the call for the 30 big blind all in, now you need 48% plus an additional 20%, maybe even more, which is gigantic, right? So you actually need to have, let's call it 70% equity against your opponent's range. Let me get out Equilab real quick. I'll show you how to figure out how much equity you have against an individual hand. Let's say the guy in the small blind's a lunatic. He's going to go all in with 100% of hands. That's not how it's going to work in reality, but let's assume he goes all in with literally, whoops, what's happening there? Let's assume he goes all in with literally any two cards. So we go to here. Oh, you can't see what I'm doing. Sorry about this. There we go. All right, so we enter 100% of hands for our opponent. This is a program called Equilab. It is free for Windows users. So we give them 100% of hands. We go to Tools, Hand Range Calculator. And then we said we wanted to have, what do we need? 68% equity against his range. Assuming we wanted to break even. But remember, you don't want to break even. You actually want to profit. So you know what? Let's say we do need a full 70% equity in this scenario. Remember, this scenario is everybody has 10 big blinds besides me and a big stack. They fold to the other 30 big blind stack in the small blind. He goes all in. And now it's on me and the big blind. What should we call with? Well, turns out only pocket nines and better. And that's assuming the opponent is jamming 100% of hands. What a lot of people do is they don't actually jam the worst hands. In reality, what we're looking at is most people aren't jamming the stone garbage, right? However, a lot of people also aren't jamming the best hands either. So let's presume he's not jamming just stone garbage. And let's assume he's still pretty active. So let's assume he's not jamming the nuts. And let's assume he's not jamming the junk, right? We can go through here and figure out what we should call with now. If we remove all the garbage plus a few nut hands, you see now we can only call pocket tens or better. So it actually gets tighter what we can call with here. And that's because of the huge risk premiums. That's a big stack versus another big stack. If we're the big stack and a medium stack goes all in, we're going to need an additional 6 to 8% equity most of the time. And a big stack versus a short stack all in, we're going to need additional 2 to 4% equity. So if they do fold to the small blind, if he goes all in for 8 big blinds, you should not call off as if there are no payout implications, even as the big stack, because you don't want to be risking chips either, even if it is a small amount. And also as the big stack, you don't even really care if the short stacks hang around. Really, the only people who really want to get the short stacks out are the medium stacks, because the medium stacks are the players who typically get crushed pretty hard due to payout implications, because the short stacks realize they're probably going to be the next one out, so they can play a little bit harder in general. But and the big stacks know they're not going to be out if they even lose a hand, so it's the medium stacks who get crushed in ICM scenarios for the most part. Anyway, as a medium stack against a big stack, you need additional, call it 13 to 15% equity. Medium stack against another medium stack, 10 to 12. Medium stack against a short stack, 5 to 7. And then as a short stack, you're going to need about 9 to 12 against the big stack, about 8 to 12 against a medium stack, and about 7 to 10 against a short stack. This is when you have to call off against their all-in. Also, as the payout structure is flatter, then there is a higher risk premium because there is more value in moving up the payout ladder. For example, if the tournament's winner take all, there are no payout implications. A long time ago, I was playing sit and goes at the Rio during the World Series of Poker. They have $1,000 winner take all sit and goes where you get a seat to the World Series main event. But very often people would chop these towards the end. And one time I got to the end with like 80% of the chips, and two other guys had 10% of the chips each. And one of the guys says, all right, are we going to chop it based on ICM? And I'm like, we can chop it based on ICM, but you realize the payouts are 10,000 0 0. So there is no ICM if it is winner take all. So if the tournament is very top heavy, ICM, or the risk premium matters less. If the tournaments are flatter, then the risk premium matters even more so. How does risk premium differ in knockout tournaments, asked Jake. There's still risk premium, but you have to realize quite often in the knockout tournaments, you don't actually care all that much about the regular prize pool. You're usually trying to collect bounties really hard, so just maintaining a big stack is vitally important in those. Knockout tournaments are hard. They're very, very convoluted. And like we have a chart where you can download at pokercoaching.com to collect the value of the bounties, but when it gets confused by final table payout implications and whatnot, it becomes a mess. Basically, I don't have a good answer for you. All right. Also notice that risk premium applies to all bets, even post-flop bets. And you may find that the risk premium before the flop, like say a big stack min raises and you're a big stack and you call. You don't need an additional 18% equity to call their initial pre-flop raise, but you may find that you need like an additional 1% equity pre-flop, and then maybe an additional 2 or 3% equity on the flop, additional 4 or 5 on the turn, and then additional like 10 or 20 by the river. And you're going to find that often does lead to good aggressive big stacks kind of battling hard, especially if one of the big stacks can still lose a pot and keep a reasonable short stack if they lose. So I have a new book coming out soon, Excelling at Tough No Limit Hold'em Games. There's a chapter by a guy named Vlada in it. And I learned a lot from it. Really, if you're the big stack and you're playing against other medium stacks, you can just apply a lot of pressure. And your opponents really can't do much about it at all. All right, let's take a look at a risk premium example. So in this scenario, ask yourself, everyone folds to us in the small blind. We have 18 big blinds. Should the small blind shove wider or tighter compared to if there are no payout implications? So we have 18 million chips. Notice there are 2 other roughly equal stacks. Ask yourself, should we shove tighter or wider than normal? Meaning, should we shove, let's say we normally shove, I don't know, let's pretend 50% of hands. Should we shove more than 50 or less than 50? I don't know what the optimal shoving range is here. But ask what we should do. Meekant says you prefer a limp. I definitely would not limp here. I think all in or fold is your only option. I mean, limping is better than folding, I think. I do think we're obviously all in here with the pocket sixes. All right. In this scenario, we should actually shove tighter by about 12%. We should be shoving tighter in this situation because we don't want to risk going broke, right? And that's going to result in us not being able to shove as wide. So we need to shove fewer hands. Next, roughly how much more equity does the big blind need to call due to the risk premium? Well, in this scenario, if we go back over here to this chart, you see, this is kind of a medium or short stack example. The big stack's going to need roughly an additional 5% equity to call in this situation. Okay? So in this spot, you should be jamming tighter than you would if there were no payout implications. And this would be even more so if there were additional shorter stacks. You should not be jamming wider unless you are the big stack and you can apply immense pressure to the shallow stacks. When you're the medium or shallow stack, you need to be tighter. So here's the small blind range, which is 41% of hands. If we were playing with no payout implications, as we see here, small blind can shove 54% of hands. I was pretty close with 50, right? But with payout implications, we should actually shove only 41% of hands. So small blind should be about 13% tighter because of the all-in implications. Assuming the small blind is going to use an all-in or fold strategy, this is what they should do. But of course, we mentioned that you should probably have a limping strategy. The way you would develop a limping strategy by looking at a chart like this is you take all these hands that are roughly break even, 0.000, 0.000, all these ones that are very close to break even, probably between like 0.05 and less. You should probably start limping those. And then you also want to limp with your absolute best hands, probably like pocket jacks and better, and then like ace queen and better, probably. Something like that. I think that's reasonable. And that's going to make you somewhat tough to play against. So when asked what these numbers are, these are the percentage of the total prize pool you win or lose by going all in. Okay? So, in this scenario, how much equity does the opponent need to call? Well, in this situation, the big blind's pot odds are 17.3 million divided by the 17.3 million plus 20.3 million. 17.3 is our all-in amount minus the big blind he already has in there, okay? So he only has to call 17 more to win all of my chips times 2 plus the ante, which comes out to this, comes out to 46% equity. And since he needs about 5% more based on the risk premium, he needs to have about 51% to break even against our range. Okay? So, in this scenario, what should he call with? Which hands have 51% equity against this shoving strategy, which, we may or may not actually be using. But if he knows we are using that shoving strategy, he should call off with roughly this. And interestingly enough, hands that have, over 50% equity against a small blind shove need to fold, like ace-7 offsuit. Folds in this spot. Ace-4 suited, pocket 4s. All easy folds. And in reality, if he wants to have an edge, he should probably take all the hands that are like 0.04 and less and fold those two, maybe 0.05. So you should fold off some of these hands that are near the bottom of the range. Okay? Some of you are not aware how to calculate pot odds. The way you calculate pot odds is the amount you have to put into the pot, which in this case is 17.3 million, divided by the entire pot, whatever that will be. In this case, all of the shover's money, all of the caller's money, and the ante. If this was cutoff versus button, it would be cutoff's money plus button's money that they are matching, and then the small blind, the big blind, and the ante. That is how you calculate pot odds. All right, so let's talk about a few flaws of ICM. ICM assumes that the tournament stops after the current hand, and all players are paid their equity of the prize pool, which is not exactly how poker works, right? Because you keep on playing. It also does not take into account your skill advantage. If you think you have an edge on your opponents, then you want to be getting better odds, right? It does not take into account position. It doesn't take into account the size of the blinds. And it also doesn't take into account when the blinds increase. And to be fair, all these things should be taken into account when you are at a final table. So this led to the idea of future game simulations coming into the equation. But it's still very, very difficult to know how this should affect your strategy, right? Also, as the average chip stack at the final table gets shorter, it's more likely that people are just going to be running into each other and someone's going to bust, and that's the reason for you to sit around and chill. If you have a medium stack and the two big stacks are going after it, right? Like, let's say they're just raising, 3-betting, 4-betting each other like crazy, then you should be really tight because one of those two is going to bust the other one, and that's going to be fantastic for you. Same thing if the shallow stacks are going nuts. If you're a medium stack or a big stack even. There are many times I've been in a final table. I actually just reviewed a hand history that I'm going to be putting on poker coaching soon, where I won a $50 tournament, and at the final table, there were two medium stacks, and every time I raised, they would jam all in on me. So as a big stack, I should be opening a lot, but they're still just jamming very wide. So what do? Well, I have to tighten up. You don't want to follow just straight ICM in these scenarios. So you want to make sure that you're taking into account what is going on. Also, like I said, position is important because if you have, let's say, a 4 big blind stack on the button, that's obviously going to be worth more than if you have a 4 big blind stack under the gun. So please realize that there are flaws to ICM, and you do have to use a little bit of logic when making these decisions. It's not just as easy as look at the calculator and do what it says. Just like whenever you're trying to solve game theory optimal strategies, it's not as easy as look at what the solver says and then do it. So ICM and final table summary, you want to avoid slightly positive chip EV spots on the final table. Your goal is to win money. Your goal is not to win the tournament. Your goal is to win money. And I know when you're playing live poker, a lot of people really get wrapped up in the idea of, I want to win the tournament. I want to get one of these trophies, right? But if you are trying to play for a living, your goal should not be to necessarily make it on TV or win a trip or win a watch or win a bracelet or win anything besides exactly money. Because especially when you start playing high stakes tournaments and first place is, I don't know, $330,000, then you can buy your own trophy. You can buy your own watch, to be fair. So I get the idea that you should perhaps put some premium on winning tournaments and making the final tables and whatnot, but don't go overboard in that because it really will cost you a ton of money in the long term. I have a good story. Where one time I was at the final table of a World Poker Tour event where I ended up winning it. Partially because on the bubble, when there were 7 and 8 people left on the final table bubble, the guy to my right, one of my friends overheard him talking to one of his friends on the rail, and he was like, yeah, I'm just going to play really tight and get in the money. And so it was clear he wasn't playing really tight. He was still playing regular hands. And every time he raised, I would just 3-bet him, and he would fold every single time. It happened literally 5 times on that final table bubble. He raised 5 hands, and I 3-bet him every single time, and he folded every single time. And like knowing that he really cares about getting on TV allowed me to crush that player, which very easily could have given me whatever chip stack I had to win the tournament. Also, make sure you take the risk premium into account in all final table scenarios, and especially anytime there's any sort of significant payout jump happening. As a medium stack, you are forced to play very tightly. Your goal there is to just kind of hang out and outlast the shallow stacks, assuming there are shallow stacks. Now, if you have, let's say, 30 big blinds and then the short stacks have 25 big blinds and the big stack has 40 big blinds, you're all basically even. You have to use a little bit of common sense here. Don't think, oh man, I'm last in chips. I only have 75 big blinds, if everybody else has 80. So use some common sense. But if you are medium stacking, there are obviously short stacks. Your only real goal is just outlast them at the moment. As the big stack, you should be applying a lot of pressure on the middle stacks because they can't really fight back and do a whole lot about it. That said, you need to be wary of players who are not ICM aware, people who don't care about ICM at all. If they're going to make very loose calls, that's actually going to cost both of you money because you do not want to be getting it all in for a lot of chips in any of these situations. You'd much, much rather your opponents fold, but if your opponents are not going to fold, then you should adjust substantially. Okay, so now, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching this, by the way. If you enjoyed this, click like, click subscribe. For those of you who want to dive deeper into all aspects of tournament poker for the next 30 days, I have something very exciting to share with you. We have our 30-day tournament preparation challenge. You can start the challenge right now for free. Go to pokercoaching.com/tournament challenge. This tournament starts on Monday, May 25th. I actually ran a 30-day challenge a few months ago, and over 700 people participated in it. And that was a lot of fun. I got to follow their progress, and since then, a few of them have gone on to win major poker tournaments. And that's exciting. I'm glad to see that type of thing happening. So I created this 30-day tournament preparation challenge to help you develop the skills that you need to succeed at every aspect of tournament poker. Not just, look at these pre-flop charts and watch this one pre-flop video. We're going to go in depth here. By the end of this 30-day challenge, you will be able to play most spots optimally. We're not going to cover every single spot you could possibly be in because there's millions of those, but you're going to know how to play most spots reasonably well. You're also going to know how to exploit your opponent's mistakes. You're going to know when to play aggressively, but also when to back off a bit and play a little bit cautiously. You're going to know how to accumulate chips with relatively little risk, and you're going to know how to use a heads-up display and the statistics that you can get from that heads-up display. Blue Note says, you presume this is only for online tournaments. Why would you presume that? Understand that poker tournaments are poker tournaments. The venue does not matter much at all. The only difference between live and online is that live, you usually have much better information, and live, the games are usually way softer at higher stakes. So it's really just, it's your skill to understand what edges you lose when you move to online poker, and also for you to be able to accurately assess the tendencies of your opponents. So don't think that online and live are very, very different things. You say you mean because of the virus. Well, yes, all this challenge is based online. You don't have to come to my house and do the challenge. No, everything gets delivered right to your poker coaching membership. Also, you're going to know how to crush the bubble. Beating the bubble is very, 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 very important. Also, you're going to know how to play the final table, and you're going to understand these ICM implications. You will also have developed a strategy that will result in you cashing a little bit less often. Sorry, if you love cashing in the tournaments and you're really good at it, you're probably losing at tournaments. In exchange for cashing a little bit less, though, you are going to win the tournament significantly more often, which will result in you having a very, very high win rate. My goal as a poker teacher is to teach you to make the most money possible. I'm not necessarily here to try to give you warm, fuzzy feelings because you get in the money. You're going to find that if you start winning tournaments and you have success doing that because you are fighting hard and you are actually trying to win, you are going to love poker a whole lot more. I can tell you, having a trophy case full of trophies like we have back here is nice, and it comes in exchange for not cashing quite as often as you otherwise could. Sometimes you're going to bubble, and that's okay. So here's how this challenge is going to work. The 30-day challenge starts on Monday, May 25th. And each day for 30 days, I'm going to give you something to do each day. Remember, we had 700 people do this last time, and they all learned a ton. You can do it for 30 days. If you do this for 30 days, you will see your poker improve. So every day, I will give you a task to do. It might be to watch a video, go through some hand quizzes, etc. And these tasks are all completed inside the Poker Coaching Premium membership area. And understand that the knowledge and the skills that you'll be learning will build on top of each other. So you need to start on day one. And after you complete each daily task, I'm going to give you a short quiz to make sure that you are actively learning the lessons that you need, because if you don't know the lessons from today, you're going to have a difficult time doing the lessons tomorrow. So here's everything we have planned out for you. As you can see, we have all sorts of things here. We're going to have $10,000 buy-in, Bellagio 5-diamond review with Jonathan Jaffe. We have a $10 online 6-max review featuring Scar Maker with me. Scar Maker is one of my students who turned $5 into $1.3 million on Party Poker. I guess it was a year and a half ago. So that was a lot of fun. We're going to be having you do some homework challenges at Poker Coaching. We have a lot of those. I'm going to be reviewing some of my deep runs. We're going to be discussing how to use heads-up displays, because I know a lot of you are struggling with that now that you're playing online a little bit more. We're going to be discussing the bubble. We're going to be discussing high roller final tables and seeing what some of the absolute best players in the world are doing to exploit their opponents, and a whole lot more. So go sign up for the 30-day challenge. You can get in there right now at pokercoaching.com/tournament challenge. Again, this will start on Monday, May 25th. And to get you started, if you've never been a Poker Coaching member, if you're not currently a Poker Coaching Premium member, you can start your free trial no later than Monday, June 1st. So I'm giving you a few days to get in there. Go to pokercoaching.com/tournament challenge to sign up, and you will have 7 days of access for free. So there you go. Hope you enjoy it. Took us a lot of effort to get this made for all of you, but I'm happy to do it. If you have any questions while you have me here, might as well ask. I see some of you are trying to debate whether or not satellites are profitable. Well, most forms of poker can be profitable. The question is it the best use of your time? Satellites are especially great if you want to exchange long-term profitability for the opportunity to win a trip or your opportunity to get rich fast. But satellites are very bad in terms of bankroll management. For example, say you play mostly satellites or only satellites. Let's say if you're good at satellites, you may be 1 in 8 to cash the satellite. Okay? Now let's say you're 1 in 8 to cash the main event that you win your way into. So now you're 1 in 8 times 1 in 8 to get a cash back. And usually that cash you get back is going to be 1.5 main event buy-ins, which is 15 satellite buy-ins roughly. So that means 1 out of 64 times you're going to get 15 buy-ins back. Now, tournaments already have enough variance. I don't think you want to add more variance by playing satellites where you cash just like super infrequently. And that's tough. For all of you who have questions about how to sign up, if you are already a Poker Coaching member to this, just go to pokercoaching.com/tournament challenge or send us an email, support@pokercoaching.com. We are happy to answer any questions we have. I cannot log in and see what access each of you have right now while we're here on the stream. So sorry about that. But yeah, satellites are interesting because I realized that, like in theory, it's very glamorous to turn almost no money into a lot of money, right? The thing is, though, is that if you look at a lot of the best poker players in the world, most of them started off very small. I mean, I'm just going to use myself as an example. I'm not saying I'm the best in the world, but using myself as an example, I started with $50 and I never had to redeposit. By the time I had $350,000 to my name, 3 years after I started playing, the biggest cash I ever had was $1,000. I played only sit and goes, but I played a lot of them. And it turns out a lot of the best players in the world spend some chunk of their life studying poker a ton and playing poker a ton. Just the other day, someone sent me an email saying, I'm sitting at home because I'm out of work and I want to play a lot of poker and get good. Can you teach me? And then he went on this tirade about how he's really good at sit and goes, but he finds them kind of boring and they don't give him a rush. And so he wants to play multi-table tournaments, and he wants me to teach him multi-table tournaments. First off, I don't have time to teach everyone one-on-one, and this guy didn't want to pay for private coaching, which is kind of obvious by the question. But if you're already good at a game, especially a game with relatively low variance, you should just play that game and play that game a ton. Because if you are good, your bankroll is just going to trickle up. He had this idea that he wanted to play for a rush. But I'm telling you, when I'm playing poker, I don't get a rush. I'm sitting here just, trying to make good decisions. And the idea of having a rush when you're playing will lead to you perhaps making poor decisions. And I don't want you to make poor decisions. And you have to ask, why am I actually playing poker? Am I playing poker to have a good long-term career, or am I playing poker for the excitement? And at the end of the day, it's usually one or two things that significantly override your decision-making process. And it was pretty clear to me that that player was playing for the excitement. And if you're playing for the excitement, you're giving up money in exchange for excitement, which, may be fine. But at the same time, if you have no money and you're worried about, paying your bills, you should probably just get to work. How much is private coaching? It depends on who your coach is. We have a bunch of coaches available at pokercoaching.com. We have a coaching form. Go there, click on that, submit it. What does it look like? Well, it depends coach to coach. I do it in a few ways. Typically, we have a Skype call or a Zoom call where you're asking me your questions and going through your hands. And usually we can find all sorts of things that you were doing wrong, and then we make sure to plug those leaks. But lots of coaches do it in various ways. Do we plan to continue developing more 30-day challenges? Well, we have sort of a generic one already, which was very popular. We have this one. I can already tell you it's going to be popular because it's really, really good. So we're going to make a cash game one eventually. We're also going to continue making shorter 7-day challenges. So that's a lot of fun. I have a tournament masterclass that's going to be coming out at some point in the near future. We are basically finished with the pre-flop section, the introduction section, the other topics section, the types of tournament sections. We're really just waiting on ICM, which, you got a little teaser here of that. And a post-flop, so we're currently working on that. All right. Yes, if any of you have any questions about billing or whatnot, please send us an email at support@pokercoaching.com because I want to make sure you are happy and not confused. Ankush from India, hello. Hope you're having a great day. How come various sites are legal or not legal in various states? Because the states get to decide which site they want to make legal. It's very important to realize that laws and regulations are important, and if you are a good ethical company, you should follow them. And that's why you see sites that are, publicly traded companies that try to be good, responsible companies not operating in all the various states in America, where you see other companies that are ran by two people sitting in an apartment in Costa Rica, they are operating in all 50 states. So be wary of who you're playing with. I made a video just yesterday about how to cash out if you are going to be playing on one of the unlicensed, unregulated sites, because it's not easy like it is on a site like Party Poker where you just click cash out and your money's there in a minute. It is much more difficult, so I want to make sure that all of you don't make the mistakes that it seems like lots of people are making. You often hear, never chop, play short stacked for practice. Daily tournaments, very often the stacks are very short. Will you chop rather than play it out? No, I typically do not chop. And if you're playing small stakes tournaments, you should especially not chop, because your job when you are playing the small stakes games is not to necessarily win as much money as possible, but to get the experience in order to know how to play well when you do finally find yourself in a high risk situation. I've been lucky enough to be heads up in a World Poker Tour tournament 3 times in my career, and never once was a chop mentioned from either player. And it's probably because every time I got heads up, I was against someone who was a good poker player. And we probably all presume we care about the money less than the opponent. And to be fair, maybe we do. Like, I know I don't care about the money at all. And I am happy to play a game that I think I'm going to be roughly break even in, plus some amount of added pressure to my opponent because they probably cannot handle the swings like I will be able to handle the swings. Take a look at my article. Google Jonathan Little, let's not make a deal. And there's a bunch of reasons for why you should not chop, especially in small stakes games. That is where your goal is to get practice. So then why don't you play on ACR? Was a little confused by your tweet. I do play on ACR. That is a site that has lots of volume, but understand when you play on an unlicensed, unregulated site, at any point in time, they could close up shop, they could be seized by the government, and when that happens, all the pending cash outs will be frozen and or stolen, and all the money in your account will be frozen and or stolen. So know that you are playing with fire, right? So understand that, if you're willing to lose 2 or 3 days worth of money, that's fine as long as you are going to be making more from that long term. I think a lot of people, they get it in their heads that like you have to be very, very stern one way or the other. You either play on the sites or you don't, or I don't know. So it's like kind of weird. A lot of people have it's almost like, I'm not going to say religious, but it's like stubborn, like some religions have stubborn ideas about things like online poker or poker in general. And you need to get all these out of your head. You need to be fluid. You need to go with whatever makes the most logical sense. Where's the best place to get my new book? You actually currently cannot get it, but you can get it from dnbpoker.com, and it'll be available there first. Do I have the cover available? I don't know if I have it on my screen. Here it is. There it is. Excelling at Tough No Limit Hold'em Games, featuring me and a bunch of players who are way better than me. We have Cavalito here, world-class PKO player. He has a chapter on progressive knockout tournaments. We have Bert Stevens. His name's Draft Ganger, one of the absolute crushers online. We have John Van Fleet, another crusher. His name's Ape Styles. We have Rob Tinian, who won the Sunday Million twice. We have Vlada here. He is the ICM master. And we have Richard Hoadley, Chips Fool. He has some really good chapters on getting really out of line and exploiting your opponents. So I'm really excited about that. All right, well, we're going to pack it up for today. I want to thank all of you for being here. Make sure you go to pokercoaching.com/tournament challenge to get into the 30-day challenge. You're going to find that if you just develop the practice of studying, that's going to go a long, long, long way to helping you succeed. And if you do something every day, you get in the habit of doing it every day, it's going to become easier and easier and easier to do. And I have made it as easy for you as I possibly can to get in there and study poker for, 20 minutes to an hour every day. And right now, especially if you're stuck at home, is the prime time for this because you have really no excuse. If you cannot sit down and devote a little bit of time to studying while perhaps, you have way less work to do, then you're probably not going to be a very good winning poker player. I hate to break it to you. So head over to pokercoaching.com/tournament challenge and study. You need to study poker in order to be good, especially if you are not already having your poker dreams realized. If you're not already having good success, then you're clearly not doing what you want to be doing, right? You're not doing something right. And getting started with this tournament preparation challenge is for you. Also, we have a 30-day challenge that's a little bit geared towards poker in general / cash games. If you are a cash game player, you can go to pokercoaching.com/premium to sign up for that. How did I build my bankroll up to $350,000? I played sit and goes, and I played only sit and goes. I played $200 buy-in sit and goes back then, and that gave me money to go play live poker. Then I started playing live poker, and I won some live tournaments. So how do we do it? We took it really slow. I played about 3,000 sit and goes a month, and I did that for about 2 years. So that comes out to how many sit and goes a year? 36,000 sit and goes a year. So I played roughly 72,000 sit and goes, and turns out if you do anything 72,000 times, well, just do a little bit of math. You make $5 a game, $5 a game times 72,000. There you go. There's your $350K. Easy game. All right. Have a great day. Enjoy yourselves. Thanks for being here. Be safe. Enjoy yourself and make the most of your time. Your time is your most valuable asset. And if you want to get good at anything in this world, you have to study it. So get to it. Head over to pokercoaching.com/30-day challenge. Again, click like, click subscribe. I appreciate it. And I'll talk to you later.